Hello and thanks for joining the midweek edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Veronica Danikboy. Let's remind you that it's exactly 100 days to the conduct of the Nigeria's 2019 general election. Have you collected your permanent voter cards? Well, today on the program, Buhari affirms commitment to payment of new minimum wage as fear of inflation mounts. Kano State House of Assembly vows to continue probing Governor Ganduje over alleged bribery in dollars as governor denies receiving bribe from contractors. And later on the show, House of Reps call for deployment of troops to flashpoints in Zamfara and Katsina. I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Asukwa James. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Our Journalist Hangout starts now. After overcoming certain obstacles, one can be excused celebration that may follow. President Muhammadu Buhari has affirmed his administration's commitment to approval and payment of 30,000 naira minimum wage to workers. But the news was met with both jubilation and disappointment. In the midst of these emotions, analysts and financial experts are calling for caution over fear of inflation and the pressure on the economy. They believe that the 60% wage increase may lead to rise in prices of goods and services in the short term. What are your thoughts, gentlemen? I'll start with you, Judy.
Oh, it's normal. Simple economics shows clearly that when you put more money in the hands of people, it can trigger inflation. But the inflation that we are talking about now is expected to be in the short term. There is no time in Nigeria when we've increased workers' salaries that we didn't see increase in prices of goods and services. In fact, market women will tell themselves that, look, they've increased the salaries of these workers, so they will now, on their own, increase the prices of the things that they sell. And we don't have price control boards like we used to have in those days, who ensure that people do not even profiteer at the expense of their countrymen and women. Or it's just normal. And you know that based on the tripartite agreement reached, the private sector is involved. And the private sector, they produce goods and they provide services.
Yes.
So if if that category of employers of labor is forced to increase minimum wage, increase the minimum wage for their workers, it then means that they will need to jack up prices so that they can at least stay afloat. If they were selling water, maybe a bottle of water at 10 naira, now to be able to make more money and even be able to make profit, it would then mean that they have to increase the prices of the things that they produce to make up for what is being spent, the extra money being spent on minimum wage. So when people say that increase in goods, the price of goods and services would go up, it is understandable. It is for reasons like this. I'm compelled to increase the salaries of workers. Then I have to find a way to bridge the gap, between expenditure and revenue. And how do I do that? I have to jack up the prices of the things that I produce. So it's just elementary economics that we are talking about here. And some people have projected that from 11%
to about 30.
It could actually go to 20. Some have said 20. Some have said 13. You know, it all depends. You know, this is something that they have to look at over a period, like a whole month, to see. They'll be able to say, okay, this is the trend. So it could be 13%. It could be 20%. It all depends on how the market responds to
the increase.
To the increase.
Well, Asukwo, the tripartite committee said it carefully weighed critical factors to arrive at this figure now. But with an inflation in sight, how realistic is this figure?
Well, it depends on what the government actually puts on ground, you know, to make it realistic. Because I know that I'm not sure the government had made any plans for this. Don't forget that they've been borrowing monies, at least for the capital projects. And since this particular increment in salaries was not included in the budget, you know, it would be very, very difficult for us to begin to think of whether the increase is going to be immediate. But in terms of the inflation, we are seriously going to suffer for it, because there are two things that will happen: is either they will lay off some people, or for the government to stay afloat for now, you know, or when it happens, or the government will have to start saying they want to send supplementary budget, then they will include it. And even at that, how will the government be able to, you know, pay the 30,000, you know, fund the 30,000 that is for the minimum wage? But for the inflation, just like experts are saying, we are going to feel it. We are already suffering from whatever you want to, the economic crunch already, you know. I am sure that they would have thought about so many things. I think what the Labour and the federal government, to be candid and frank, the increment was necessary, because this should have been done maybe 2 years back, you know, because the last review was in 2011, so, and it's 5 years, you know. So in 2016, yes, it would have been done, but it is now moving to 2018. And if we had looked at what we had in 2016 and we have done that, you know, maybe it would have been in a bigger mess, because then that was when the oil prices were very, very low. But now it has improved a bit. So the government will be looking at, okay, if the oil prices are now up a bit.
How about the value of the Naira? And
the value of the Naira then, you know, then Naira was even struggling. You know, so it was just the policy that the government actually, you know, brought in place. Because I remember then, people were saying that dollar was going to be 1,000. Was getting closer to 1,000, or by the time it's December, you know, there was this apprehension. But now the Naira has been able to is now stable, at least at 356 to 360. So if you look at it, what economists are saying that we will suffer this inflation for a very short time. But will Nigerians be able to, you know, sacrifice that short time? Short time in Nigeria is like long term. You understand?
We are not patient.
We are not very patient, especially now that people are beginning to lose confidence in whatever the government is bringing, even though there are so many signs that the government is pushing money into critical projects. But for the Nigerians to have confidence in the government to say, okay, and for the government to also push out the right words, you know, to appeal to Nigerians that, okay, we have made this increment, but please, you have to bear with us, so that once we increase these salaries, we will not be able to sack people, and then we'll be able to pay, but some things will suffer. That is just a given. So many things will suffer in this very increment.
And so if we are having all of this, then is it really, really going to boost the purchasing power of the Nigerian worker as it is envisaged it should, Jide?
Well, it's one of the envisaged advantages of increasing minimum wage is that it will increase consumption expenditure. It will put more money in the hands of the worker, and ultimately it will lead to economic growth. But as I said earlier, in the short term, you will see the Nigerians will feel the strain because, look, whether we like it or not, in terms of its correlation with inflation, increasing minimum wage is similar to increasing fuel prices. It will come with some ripple effects, but increasing minimum wage is the right thing to do. One, it's there in the constitution that you have to do it. Two, the Nigerian worker has suffered for years decline in the value of the naira, because the naira technically was devalued, and which means that the purchasing power of the average worker had gone down significantly. What you used to buy in at maybe 10 naira in 2011, if you go for it now, you will see that it is already more than double that price. And we have no mechanism by which we are able to even keep prices stable. Once prices of goods and services begin to go up in Nigeria, it is up and up that they go. It's rare that they come down.
Why are we not looking at cushioning this impact, knowing that this is what happens on a regular whenever we
let me tell you,
wages?
there is no measure by which we can stop this from happening. How the government manages the economy, other things that the government will do will ensure that the pains the pains do not linger. That's why we are saying the short term, because one is confident that in the fullness of time, these things will even themselves out. But the average trader out there who believes that because workers' salaries have been increased, then she has to increase the price of ugu or the price of Maggi cubes that she sells and all that. There's nothing you can do today. This has been their nature. When we had Udoji Award in the 70s, this was what happened. I'm sure your old man must have told you about Udoji Award because you were not born then. When we had Udoji Award in the 70s, this was what happened. People began to increase the price of goods in the market, so that the money that came to the worker, eventually a good chunk of it went to, got taken away by the fact that price of goods and services went up. It will happen in this case. It's just, companies would want to retain corporate profits as a result of having to pay more to take care of wages, because it then means that your wage bill will go up. If the minimum wage, once minimum wage goes up, your wage bill will go up. Even other categories of workers will have some amount of money added to their salary, because you don't then increase Asuko's wages and then allow him to earn even higher or be at par with his boss. So there will be some incremental adjustment to the wages of
everybody,
of everyone. So this is the thing. The minimum wage has all kinds of ripple effects that will come with it. It's inevitable that prices will go up. I'm sure that even when workers were negotiating for this, they knew that the market will respond to it by increasing price. They knew that those traders out there will respond to it by increasing price of goods and services. So the truth is, government, and I suggested it on Monday, that government has to find a way of easing the pain of the ordinary Nigerian. And we have to even look at ourselves and tell ourselves that, look, beyond increasing minimum wage at every turn, what can we do to improve the welfare of the worker? What can we do to make the average worker feel that he's actually enjoying being a public servant, for example, that is enjoying? No matter how low you are, how low your cadre is, there has to be a conscious attempt to look at the welfare of workers and provide incentives that will ensure that workers benefit, maybe housing, in form of housing, in form of even education. Education shouldn't be as expensive as it is in our country. So if government does something like, okay, we make even public, we make education free, even up to secondary level. Let's not even talk about tertiary level. We say up to secondary level. Some of the pain, and we improve the quality of instruction in the public schools. Many of our people will not send their children to private schools. We saw it happen in Rwanda. The moment government improved the quality of public schools and improved the quality of instruction in public schools, people began to disenroll their children from private schools and began to put them in public schools. Even in Osun, it happened. The moment Aregbesola improved the quality of the public schools, a lot of people began to move their children because you see how beautiful those schools are. You feel proud as someone from Osun. And then they began to move their children from private schools to those places. But what I'm saying is, if you now make education up to secondary level, for example, free across board in our country, some of the money that parents spend, that workers spend to educate their children will be saved for something else.
All right, Asukwa, perhaps this is the reason why some persons believe that an increment is not necessarily what should be done, but like Jide has pointed out, looking at welfare. And also another issue is perhaps cutting down on our spending.
Well, it's true. Like you're saying something about cutting down. Just like Jide was saying, I thought about welfare. You know, apart from even the government trying to reduce allow people that, okay, fine, I'm giving you this amount of money. Government should be able to also help in trying to make sure that those little welfare facilities are on ground. Like, take, for instance, healthcare. You know, yes, we have heard about the NHIS, you know. Government can reduce the amount that parents are paying or people are paying, maybe from 5,000 to maybe 500. I know some states we are doing that, but you know, when once it comes to another government will say, no, you have to start paying. So government can help people or the workers, you know, to say, okay, fine, Medicare from so age, from age 0 or age 5 to maybe age 15 or 20 is free. Because right now, I know it's from 0 to about 3 years is free in some states. You know, then from maybe from 60 or 50 and above is also free of charge. But the other rank, the other age bracket, you have to pay. So government can now say, okay, that age bracket that you have to pay, you reduce it. Make sure that they are included in the National Health Insurance Scheme, you know, and make the monies that they will be paying very low, you know. Then from there, you come to housing. There are so many workers who are paying through their nose for them to get a shelter over their heads. So government can now say, okay, we want to build houses for these workers. And once you build houses, you make sure that those houses are comfortable for them. Don't just build houses for just housing's sake, for you to make name. Just make sure that those facilities are on ground. Get those houses, make sure there's water and there's electricity. Because if you build a house and you can't get water, you still have that same money that you have given to them as salaries is the same thing they will look for who is going to provide water for them, or they will also provide water for themselves. Same with electricity, you know. So if you don't have electricity, they will also have to buy fuel for them to power their generators. So government will have to look at all these little indices that they won't need to always say in the next 5 years we want to increase minimum wage. I know in so many countries it might be a law, but if you look at the percentage they add to the minimum wage, you notice that it's just going to be minimal. Why? Because every other thing is available. So by the time the labor people are coming to say, oh, we need increment, government would have sat down with them just like the tripartite committee and said, okay, but we have provided this, we have provided this, we have provided this. So why do you need that increment? And then if they bring their positions on the table and they understand, it will just be minimal. So if government provides all those things, we don't need to start saying we want a massive increment. So in terms of we thinking outside the box, I think it's the state government. They have to start thinking outside the box to assist the federal government. We have said it times down number. So many states have massively naturally endowed.
Okay, if you could just hold the thought. We have Tijani calling from Osun State. Welcome to the show. Go ahead with your contribution.
Good evening, Otitaloju.
I greet you, sir.
How is work and your family? As far as this labor union is concerned, as you have said, it will make a very, very huge problem on the masses. Simply because, as you have said, it will have great effect on everything, both the transport, the pepper seller in the market, the Okada riders, and many other things. But it will be very better for Nigerians and the labor leaders if they will be requesting for any minimum wage. I think they should know how to put it in order not to affect the poor masses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tijani, for your contribution.
Yeah, right. like I was saying, this state government should also help, you know, trying to, I was talking to a few people when this whole minimum wage thing came up. I said, okay, fine, what of if government says, okay, I'm going to propose that, okay, we don't need to increase that much, you know, to maybe 30,000. Okay, let's give you people like land, for instance, and then they start farming. If they get more that farming, government can also say, okay, fine, we'll give you the fertilizers, we'll pay you maybe 22,000 like the state government you are saying, but we'll give you subsidized land for you, we'll subsidize, we'll provide fertilizer for you to, you know, fend for yourself and also provide for the economy. It can be a two-way thing. But by the time you say you want to push out the whole money, that is where the inflation will come. And state governments are not thinking. So many states, there was a time a statistic came out and 17 states were owing salaries and pensions. And don't forget, those pensions are the old people. So it becomes a burden on the federal government. So I don't know how the federal government is going to go about this, but I know that if this government comes, or any government that comes next year, it's going to be very difficult to pay salaries by the time it's June.
Yes, I just hope that government can come up with the right strategies to stimulate the economic growth. We do not have any alternative. We must work to stimulate economic growth. That's why the government was voted into office. And at this time, given the inevitability of a new minimum wage, government must realize that stimulating economic growth has to be its priority. Because if money in the hands of the people is growing at a pace higher than the pace in which the economy is growing, that is going to reduce the value of our currency. So then it makes no sense to anyone to actually have higher money in your hands, but
The value.
having to pay higher bills. You get the point that I'm
Yes,
making?
yeah.
You know, so because at the end of the day, you don't see that as a win-win situation. Yes, you have so much money, but you are having to pay higher bills.
Because the
You know?
electricity will increase.
Yes, because the currency,
The value of the
value of the currency will respond.
Exactly.
Will respond to an increase in the minimum wage. It's just inevitable. You will see that you now have to pay more for virtually everything. Yes, you have more than you used to have, but you're having to pay higher bills. So that is that is why they have to stimulate economic growth. And once they stimulate economic growth, it will be able to take care of this and ensure that the pain is not stretched longer than necessary. Because as economists have projected, this kind of pain, it will not be for the long term. It's just for the short term. But we must come up with the right policies. And one of the things that will likely happen is, as the Muhammadu Buhari administration tries to spend more money on capital projects, you will see that an increase in minimum wage would increase the wage bill of even the federal government, which means that what we will spend on recurrent expenditure will go higher.
Yeah.
So if we are struggling to achieve 70-30 ratio between recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure, it would then mean that if we are not careful, we could slip back to the past by doing 80-20, which cannot stimulate growth. We have to try our best to spend ourselves into prosperity. Just as Obama said that we must spend ourselves out of recession. We are not in recession now, but we must spend ourselves into prosperity by coming up with all those capital projects, all the infrastructure and all that, that will inevitably lead to economic growth. So there's a lot that the government has to do at this stage. It's desirable to have minimum wage.
But
we are not opposed to it. We will be wicked people to oppose the idea of minimum wage when we know what the Nigerian worker is going through at this time. But there are some truths that also come. There are some inevitable realities that Nigerians will have to face when the new minimum wage comes on stream.
It's passing to you. Anyway, still to come, Kano House of Assembly vows to continue probing Governor Ganduje over alleged bribery in dollars as governor denies receiving bribe from contractors. Stay with us. Bribery, like two sides to a coin, involves two parties, the one who gives and the other who takes. Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje was recently caught in a web of bribery allegation in a series of video clips that have gone viral. Following this, the State House of Assembly jumped into action and set up a 7-man committee to investigate the matter. The committee had begun a probe into the allegation until a Kano State High Court ordered it to stop work. But chairman of the committee, a member representing Kano Municipal, Bafa Danagundi, said the probe will proceed despite the court order. He said the Constitution permits their action, and so they will go ahead. Jide, what exactly do you think is going on here?
Yeah, when the videos hit the internet, many Nigerians were pretty disappointed at what is going on. We know that in Nigeria, receiving gratification, bribes for contracts is a very popular thing. As they say in Yoruba land, that everybody is a thief. It is the person who gets caught that we always hold on to. For Governor Ganduje I've heard repeatedly even from his aides that the video that came out was doctored, is fake. But in my view, the governor did a disservice to himself by not appearing before the investigators. Because he said through Mohammed Garuba, the Commissioner for Information, that he has never received bribe from anyone. Maybe that's true. He also went as far as saying that Jafar has a history of trying to rubbish people, of publishing falsehood against big people in the society. He pointed to stories that he did against the Emir of Kano, accusing the Emir of Kano of corruption and of being wasteful in the way he spends the Emirates' money. Talked about Shekarau, claimed that Shekarau actually had a house outside Nigeria, whereas Shekarau didn't have any house outside Nigeria. In fact, Shekarau's only house today was built for him by the state government. I remember that clearly. But taking on Jafar is not the best strategy. The best strategy would have been for the governor to appear before those men. Because if your conscience is clear, that you've never taken bribe from anyone, you should even be prepared to waive your immunity. You remember when Mandela had his divorce issues with Winnie? As President, Mandela appeared in court. And at a point when Winnie's lawyer was trying to ridicule him, he said, see, I'm not going to tolerate insults. I waived my immunity to come here, but I will not tolerate insults. So the fact that someone has immunity does not mean that if your name, your good name, is about to be rubbished, that you shouldn't do your utmost to ensure that you clear your name. And my own feeling is that that was a mistake that the governor made. I do not, I can't say at this point whether he's guilty or he's not guilty. I have no means by which I can ascertain if indeed those clips were real or were not real. I don't have the know-how. It seems believable to me, but that's just looking at it. I don't have the know-how to be able to say, oh, this was doctored, it was not doctored. I could actually say, no, I believe it was not doctored, and in the fullness of time, maybe forensic analysts may come up with something different, and I'll look like a fool, you know? So, but what I'm saying is the governor should have come out. And then I am also worried that there are some people who do not want the probe to go on, who have now gone to court, because the governor was supposed to, the tape was supposed to be previewed, or the tapes were supposed to be previewed on Tuesday in the presence of Jafar, the governor's lawyer, and other people. And then on Monday, they went to court to say that, oh, the court should stop this from happening. It reminds me of what happened in Lagos many years ago when we had the true face of Lagos. And Fashola was being investigated by the House, and some of the allegations were really upsetting. At the end of the day, somebody just went to court, and that was the end. You know, so I don't think that it is the right strategy for the governor to not appear. If I were him and my conscience is clear, I would have gone before those guys. I would have even waived my immunity and gone before them to say, look, these videos are fake, and I'm prepared to prove that those videos are fake. And it's my wish that the gentleman governor of Kano will proceed to prove that those videos are fake.
All right, Asuko, well, the Kano State Assembly has vowed that it will continue with the investigation because the chairman of the committee is saying that the judgment did not state that the committee should stop the investigation. Rather, it advised it to maintain status quo. But how do you see this case going, really?
Well, it's a very tough one. You know, it's tough because what we are seeing from this other side might be different from what the courts will see, even if they go ahead with the investigation and all. You know, just like we are saying that everything that is on social media looks real, but the governor is still saying it's doctored, you know. And then they are saying that they have so many clips, churning out these clips over and over and again, and it looks as if it's real. Yeah. So it's now left for the forensic experts to now come and say, okay, we have checked it, and it's this and that. And that's the only way they can do that is allowing the panel to go ahead with the investigation. You know, from there, we'll be able to know if it's actually doctored or if it's real. You know, but where I'm even going to is, I'm looking at Jafar, who Jide said he has history of always bringing out so many issues and all that. I'm looking at, okay, this is investigative journalism. He has tried. You know, and we've seen so many other newspapers who have tried to bring out, you know, issues, and those issues have been tackled. Take, for instance, the Kemi Adeosun matter, you know, where that Premium Times actually busted, you know. And from there, people are beginning to know that investigative journalism is coming out from this our end. It's a very tough thing, but from this, everybody, all public officers would now know that it is not going to be business as usual. So, and like when I was in school, they say, okay, there's this thing we call Okafor's law. If you steal, don't get caught. So that is what everybody will be looking at now. That, if I'm collecting
directly.
I'm collecting, maybe they have to look for a proxy, someone that will go and collect.
It's about trusting. You see, the problem with many public officers in Nigeria is that they find it difficult to trust fellow Nigerians.
Exactly.
The lesson, they picked up valuable lessons during Buhari's first appearance on the scene as Nigeria's military ruler. Some of the people, the government of that time identified the big fronts that big politicians were using. And once they arrested those fronts, they began to speak like, sing like canary. And in the end, these governors and other big people were jailed. Some of them jailed for like 60-something years. You know, that was Buhari's style. Give you like 60-something years so that you can die in prison. You know, people like Bakinzuwo, 60-something years. You know, and Bakinzuwo was forced to say, continue to be sentencing. You know, so now a lot of our big people, our politicians, prefer to use the Lebanese to keep money for them. Because the Lebanese, they don't talk like our own people. Once you use them as a front, they'll go and hide the money for you. Nobody knows, and you can sit back. After you leave office, you can begin to enjoy your money. But the lesson from this, whether Ganduje is found guilty or not, is that governors and other people who have made a career out of collecting bribe, whether in dollars or in pound sterling, will be very careful. They will not directly collect it and be slipping it into their pockets just all by themselves. They will rather use people or look for other means. You know, judges, when they want to take bribe, judges many times don't even take the bribe in Nigeria. They will set up a date or an appointment in Ghana, and then they will be given money in foreign currency. And not that it will pass through the banks.
That's when they would have checked their diary to check the itinerary.
Yes, when they said, okay, I have no judgment or so they will go to Ghana. In fact, a judge actually collected bribe. One of the Nigerian judges collected bribe in dollars inside a supermarket in Ghana. Because if you try to send money electronically to them, alarm bells will ring and EFCC will come after you. So now the implication of this is that these guys will be more careful. Everybody can see what has happened. No matter how this whole matter ends, whether it ends in favor of the governor or it doesn't end in his favor, people will know that, we have to be careful. Anything can happen. Somebody could actually have a pen, in his pocket that will be recording you while that transaction is taking place.
You mentioned people looking at even the governor too, just like he would have appeared, just like Jide said, because if he really he didn't want the assembly to go ahead, he would have even sued Jafar personally for defamation, but he didn't.
So that matter will have that will probably have stopped the assembly.
Stopped the assembly from
because like the National Assembly now, they have in their rules. Once a matter is up for litigation, they don't get involved.
So, but I think the governor really wants the case to.
And someone was saying that the governor, that by virtue of his immunity, that the House cannot even invite him and be grilling him in that manner.
Well, that's where I was going to, because the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Corruption, that's Professor Isi Sage, was saying that the Kano State House of Assembly is not equipped to investigate because of it's a forensic analysis that has to be, done, and it is the EFCC that is meant to, handle such. But then we haven't heard anything from the EFCC concerning this matter.
No, I disagree with him that the representatives of the people cannot investigate a matter in their state. They can investigate.
Of course, it's their state.
They can investigate. So they can investigate. But once they come with their findings, they can hand over the report
to the EFCC,
so that the person can be prosecuted. The governor, for example, does not have immunity against investigation, but he has immunity against prosecution. So, which means that if he leaves office, they can decide to say, okay, let us prosecute this person. So, I don't think that it is wrong for them to attempt to investigate what has happened. And they are saying, look, it's within our rights
for them to
investigate. Let the courts prove that they had no right to investigate. That's the same way some people told us that the EFCC cannot go to states to investigate how governors are stealing money and all that. And the courts have ruled, I think the appeal court has ruled now, that EFCC can go to any state to investigate corruption.
Exactly.
So it's really a very complex situation. Sometimes when I see Bafa Danagundi talking, I ask myself, how will this matter end? This matter has dragged on for some time. It took a long while before Jafar even came out with those videos, And I'm like, how will this matter end? How will the lawmakers decide this matter? Because even if they don't have the know-how to know whether a video is real or is not real, at least they can bring experts.
Exactly.
And once those experts look at the video, then their findings, they can work on their findings. But as I said earlier, it is the governor now. The ball is firmly in his court. He has to come out to prove his innocence. Yes. And Jafar knows that once the governor can establish his innocence, that he will be in trouble. And I'm happy that he was provided sufficient security to appear before the court. Jafar used to be SA Media to Kwankwaso, but it doesn't really matter. As a Nigerian, if he sees anything that is wrong, he has the right to publish. As a journalist, he has the right to publish what he thinks is wrong. So saying that he used to work or he still works for Kwankwaso, it's not a kind of defense for the governor or his people. The governor has to come out and clear his name. We are waiting for him to do that.
All right, moving on now. Nigeria's northwest states of Zamfara and Katsina have had mixed fortunes regarding kidnapping. While Katsina have been able to adopt homegrown strategies to curtail the scourge, Zamfara has continued to battle against perpetrators of the evil act. Just recently, bandits abducted twin sisters Hassana and Husseina in Dauran town of Zurmi local government area. The abductors had demanded 100 million naira ransom for their release. To put a stop to these wanton abductions, the House of Representatives called for deployment of troops to flashpoints in the two states. Will this call by lawmakers make any difference to stop this menace, Asoko?
Well, it will not. You know, this is a tough call, you know, because recently, you know, there was this kidnap, and then it went on social media that the twins were actually kidnapped, though they've been freed,
yes.
you know. And I know the operation is also on ground, the military operation, Wire Stroke is also on ground, and they've been able to, you know, carry out so many arrests. And I think yesterday also I read in papers where somebody was compensated for, you know, using his car to hit bandits in Zamfara, you know, and he was compensated with 2 million. Yeah. So it means that the governor is now saying that this thing has to end. You know, kidnapping and banditry has to end in Zamfara, because that is the only way. There was a time the governor was seriously overwhelmed, and we kept talking right here.
Yes.
And at the point, the governor almost, you know, left the state and left the state for God to take over, to take control of the state. But now the governor is in the state and is being proactive, you know, because all he needed was for him to just, think, how do I solve this problem? And the problems are beginning to come, you know, it's being settled one way or the other. But it just can't end like that, because something that has festered like a cancer, it will take time for it, you know, to heal. You know, and the reps, yes, the representatives have taken it to the House, but it has to also take its cool a bit. The military, they are doing a lot of work. Like we used to say, the military is overstretched. And that is why they are having all these operational bases virtually everywhere in Nigeria. There's nowhere. We are just having operational base and we are fighting Boko Haram. Armed banditry is just on our necks. The virus stroke, like we are saying, is all the same operation. They have something similar in Benue. You know, and now we are talking about Zamfara and Kaduna. We don't know which other operational base that they will be thinking of. And don't forget the Operation Python Dance, you know, and Crocodile Smile. It's everywhere. You know, all these operations is really bringing the military to his knees. So the House of Rep member, yes, he has actually taken it to the plenary, but you should know that so many people are also involved in it. And so what we just want to appeal is that the government should do more. Perhaps increase in intelligence gathering, increase in sensitization. There's nothing stopping the government from talking to the traditional rulers, because it is the traditional rulers
to the people
that are very, very closer to the people. Appeal to people, talk to people, for them to have this cordial relationship with their neighbors. And for the armed bandits, the governors also have to find a way to provide jobs for people. They must find a way to provide jobs. But not bad jobs, but good jobs for the people. I know in the north, they go into serious farming. So why can't they involve people into farming?
All right, let's bring Jide in now on this matter. Cracking down on the activities of kidnappers, rustlers, and all of it in this state, Zamfara, Katsina. What is the way forward?
Zamfara, to a large extent, Katsina to a large extent, until recently, had been peaceful. But cattle rustlers are back stealing cattle in 2 local governments in Zamfara, in Katsina. because the government came up with the amnesty program and it clearly had worked. Some years back, people were being killed for fun by cattle rustlers. In fact, in 2015, on the day Goodluck Jonathan visited Katsina State, more than 100 people were killed by cattle rustlers in one attack. So, but since Governor Masari came to power, that has
subsided.
Yes, because they engaged, they went into the bush, led by Mustafa Inua, the SSG, the Secretary to the Government of Zamfara, of Katsina State. They engaged these guys where they asked for schools and even piped water in the bush. They provided, and so those killings stopped. And they were even the ones, they constituted themselves into vigilantes who are catching their own colleagues who are still involved in cattle rustling. So to a large extent, Katsina has been a success story in terms of curtailing the excesses of these guys. But Zamfara, we have not been able to solve the problem in Zamfara. In fact, at a point when the military operation began, they were killing those guys in their camps in the forest. But clearly now, those guys are back. And it's just similar to what happens with Boko Haram. Once they study us for some time, they are constantly tweaking their tactics. Whereas we stick to one tactic, even if it's not getting us results, we just stick to that same strategy. They constantly tinker with their strategies. And so now we are no longer reading reports of the Air Force killing bandits in Zamfara, as we were reading a couple of months back. The bandits are back in charge. They are attacking local governments, Zurumi, Shinkafi, all of these major local governments. They are back killing people and kidnapping people. They are now on the highway, Talata Mafara, the road that leads to Sokoto. They stay on the highway. Sometimes they operate for hours, kidnapping people. The people that they think can pay good money, they set those ones aside and then ask for ransom. In some cases, you pay ransom and the wicked bandits in Zamfara will still go ahead and kill you. So it just means that we have to be more serious. A situation in which bandits come to town and they first sack the police station, chase everybody away so that they can have a free reign. It's not what we should be seeing. And the rate at which they are killing people in Zamfara is such that there has to be a state of emergency declared on banditry in Zamfara. Not the kind of state of emergency that Obasanjo declared, where you will say all political structures must be put in abeyance. No, that was done with an antiquated law, a law that no longer exists. No Nigerian leader can come up with that kind of state of emergency again because it will be resisted. So that's why Buhari can do that kind of state of emergency. It was done with a law that no longer exists. But I was reading up about these killings, and I saw that between June 2016 and June 2018, 2,992 people were killed in Zamfara, 582 villages destroyed, 13,838 cows stolen, 11,088 sheep and goats stolen, 2,244 motorcycles stolen. So what this means is that those guys have declared war on the Nigerian state, and maximum force has to be brought to bear on them. Governor Yari has come up with the idea of employing 1,500 civilian JTF. Yes, civilian JTF worked in Borno State, but the only way it can work is if they are constantly attached to the military operating in that area. They have to work closely. Otherwise, these bandits are better armed than them because you are not going to give AK-47s to civilian JTF. Yeah. Even in Borno State, they don't carry that caliber of weapons. Maybe then gun or just sticks. But if you just employ civilian JTF, They don't work in tandem or closely with the army. These boys, when they storm a town, they come like up to 300 at times, and each of them carrying AK-47. They are going to kill the civilian JTF. So this has to be well planned. The governor said they are set aside 1.5 billion to employ those people. The strategy has to be spot on. It's not just, we don't just throw money at problems. Exactly. We have to have the right strategy and ensure that we keep our people safe. It really distresses me, just as the president said, to be reading about the killing of people. I mean, too many people die in our country. It's not something that one will be happy about.
Of course. Well, I must thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution on the program. This is how far we can go. Well, that's all on Journalist Hangout. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can also watch Journalist Hangout on other platforms showing on the screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Our feedback channel is a Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. I'm Veronica Dani Boy. Bye for now. God bless Nigeria.